died in his home in this palace. Less than 30 years since that cold case, there weren't even traces of blood anywhere, terrorizing this city and the surrounding areas for almost 2 decades. The monster of Florence and the Californian Zodiac were the same person. Hey guys, welcome back to Dramatically Expatic and welcome back to Florence. We are back to this gorgeous city, rich in art and history and culture, but we're here to look for its dark side because we'll be following some true crime stories, some unsolved mysteries and cold cases that have terrified Florence for ages. Now guys, if you're ready, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, hit the bell button down below so you don't miss anything new, and let's go with me and try to unveil some mysteries. Well, usually we are focusing on historical stories, and the history, ancient history of the places. Today, we're actually following more recent stories because although Florence has a very long history, and of course there have been many criminal and true crime stories here in the past, some of the most notorious stories, some of the cold cases that has already made history have happened in the past 50 years or so. And one of them has actually happened in this street right behind the Florence Duomo, right in the city center in 1995. So it's basically been less than 30 years since that cold case, and it's been absolutely horrendous. Imagine late March 1995, more or less the same time period. It's April now, but still. Late in the evening, a retired art typographer comes here on this street to one of the bookshops where he occasionally works 2-3 times a week, nothing special, but he wasn't supposed to be there that evening because it was Friday. And on Fridays he usually stayed at home, but for some reason, and nobody knows why, he decided to show up to work that night. At 8:30 in the evening, he was seen organizing stuff in the bookshop with a visitor with long hair, but nobody knew whether it was a man or a woman, and maybe it was also the man's assassin. But 15 minutes later, at 8:45, one of the priests of Duomo has passed by the bookshop and found our victim dead. He was found with 27 wounds of the knife, and that was apparently the weapon of the assassin. But nobody knows why was he killed, what was the motive, because Marco was a very calm man, he was retired, a family man with very refined interests. He loved to go to the theater, loved visiting art exhibitions and creating art himself. He was passionate about music, but getting 27 knife wounds was something that nobody could have expected for him. But guess what? Nothing was stolen from the bookshop, nothing was taken, everything was in perfect order, as if on purpose. There weren't even traces of blood anywhere except for the victim's body. It has puzzled the police and everyone, the investigators, and some actually assumed that it was a passionate crime. But that case remained a cold case. Nobody has managed to solve it even 30 years later. You know, guys, I feel like Florence is so full of these hidden courtyards and really, really narrow streets that you can easily imagine all these crime stories happening here. Of course, today it is a very safe city and it's lovely and all, but you know, sometimes walking these streets, very narrow, very empty ones, not the ones where tourists usually stay on, you know, it feels a little bit, I can feel a little bit uneasy because I can totally imagine all the things happening here, and especially if you think about the medieval times, the Renaissance times, back in times when there wasn't even enough street lighting, what could have happened in places like this. Jumping 2 years forward to January 1997, another central location and another cold case. A murder that happened right here in this ancient palace. Can you imagine? Now the victim was very, very different because it was the Count, coming from an ancient noble family, Count Alvise di Robilant, who died in his home in this palace. A famous art collector, he was once working for Sotheby's, but after returning to Florence, he was noted in the art circles and he was often seen at the art exhibition, and he had many friends in the art world. But the night of the 15th of January, something went wrong. He was found dead in his own bedroom after 4 deadly wounds, with an object that was never found, as well as the assassin. The investigators never managed to identify the murderer, but what was really strange about this case was that not only the Count was dead, but the screen of his computer was broken and the 17th century painting was broken in half and positioned on top of his bed, which brought the investigators to remember about the similar case that happened in Venice a couple of years earlier, when another art collector was also murdered in his own palace in Venice, and another artwork was broken and once again positioned on the bed. So who knows if there was any link between the two murderers, but the case remained unsolved. Actually, both cases remained unsolved. What was even stranger was that the neighbor heard someone playing the piano that night, and while the Count was known as a rather skilled piano player, the person who played the piano played horrendously. The neighbor recounted a really bad melody and the play was really terrible, so who knows who was the one playing the piano. Maybe it was the assassin, but since this case was another cold case of Florence, nobody will probably ever know. But of course, the most notorious cold case in Florence happened even earlier, when a serial killer, kind of a Florentine Jack the Ripper, was terrorizing this city and the surrounding areas for almost 2 decades. And he was never identified, only as the monster of Florence. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and I'll tell you more. Let's go! The monster of Florence, the serial killer who has committed at least 16 murders from 1968 to 1985. He was murdering and targeting couples, usually young couples, who were secluded in search of intimacy, and he has brutally murdered them all. So 8 couples, 16 people in total. There was nobody who has managed to survive him. But what is the most astonishing thing is that the police has never managed to catch him or to identify him even. There were at least 3 people convicted as potential murderers, but nobody was convicted definitely. And one of the 3 has actually died before the final trial. The investigations lasted for years and actually decades, but to no avail. There were so many journalistic investigations as well, with one of the journalists being actually arrested because the police considered that he was interfering with the official investigation. There were even several books written about the monster of Florence. There were several media productions about him, and of course countless articles in various newspapers, because he happened to be the first Italian serial killer. Definitely not the record one would be proud of, but it just happened to be here around Florence, mostly in the surrounding areas, not in the city itself. In 2018, one of the international magazines has actually suggested a theory that the monster of Florence and the Californian Zodiac were the same person. And that's it for today, guys. I hope that you enjoyed these true crime stories. I hope that you enjoyed seeing Florence again, even though we've discovered a much darker side of this city. But you know, as any big city, it will have its own mysteries and it will have its own dark secrets. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, hit the bell button down below so you don't miss anything new, like and comment this video. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time.